Hello YouTube, welcome to this last installment of the Book of Five Rings. After this episode, we're going to have to say goodbye to Musashi because we're going to move on to another scripture. But for now, we are going to dive deep in the last part of the Wind book and then enter the Book of the Void, which is actually my favorite book out of the entire edition of this Book of Five Rings. And I think it's the one with the most meaning, which is a very interesting thing because it's the smallest book. It's only one page. But as far as the Book of the Wind goes, we stopped at I think this part here, which was the last 2 pages. Musashi says, "Speed is not part of the true way of strategy. Speed implies that things seem fast or slow, according to whether or not they are in rhythm. Whatever the way, the master of strategy does not appear fast." Here we have to think about speed in a different way than the modern definition of the term, right? Speed is, of course, a subjective value. If you are yourself stationary and someone runs by you at 10 miles per hour, they appear fast. If you run at 10 miles per hour, they appear stationary. If you're in a car that goes at 100 miles per hour, you're going to see that things outside of the car that don't move as fast look as if they are frozen in time. All of this proves that speed and the perception we have of speed is dependent on our subjective bias and the way we perceive the world. That being said, speed is also an objective value. Something that goes at 10 miles per hour will always go at 10 miles per hour, and it can be calculated and it can be put next to something else with the same mass or a different mass, the same volume or a different volume at 10 miles per hour, and it's going to be at the same speed. What Musashi tells us here is that speed should be understood as a quality of rhythm and not its own thing. Things that are slow can still be in rhythm, and things that are speedy or quick can still be in rhythm. But the pure rhythm is just the ability to go through with the movement. And if you go through with the movement and the movement is successful, then you are in rhythm. And Musashi is sort of telling us that whether you are fast or not doesn't really matter. That's why he says the master of strategy does not appear fast. It's tough to explain to people who haven't experienced it. Someone who's mastered something, they will make things look completely effortless, and because of how fluid they will be in their movements, it's going to be tough to even capture the speed at which they go. And the only way to recapture it is if you try, you with your minimum experience, to replicate it, because you're going to find that you're not going to be as effective. Someone could be potentially faster than a master at doing a certain thing, but they're not going to be as competent as at actually achieving what the master does. So for Musashi, a master of strategy does not appear fast. He's in the rhythm. It's different. Some people can walk as fast as 100 or 120 miles in a day. But this does not mean that they run continuously from morning till night. Unpracticed runners may seem to have been running all day, but their performance is poor. This is exactly what I just meant. You could technically say that someone who runs for 8 hours is going to be faster than someone who alternates between running and walking for the same 8 hours. But the logic tells us that it doesn't essentially mean that the person who always runs is going to cover more distance or that they're going to be as efficient. Musashi also tells us, hey, maybe you covered more distance, but you did it in a way that is going to deplete you of so much energy that the guy who might have not ran as far during the same period of time is still going to outrun you at the end of the day because they're going to be able to replicate that effort. Very important in training. There is no point in giving it all you have for one day and then being out of commission for 7 days. A guy who's able to put in the work every single day, who manages his recovery, his volume and intensity, is going to be the winner at the end. Why? Because he accumulates more tonnage. He's able to train for longer. If you can only train once a week and you give it all you have, at the end of the day, you only train 4 times in the month. A guy who trains 4 times a week has trained a lot more than you have. Even if you think that you really gave it your all, if you compare tonnage and volume, at the end of the day, objectively, you were beat. And that's what Musashi tells us here. And he also shares a message of sparing your effort. This is something that is related to at the animal kingdom. The animals that we see as the most brutal, the most wild, the fastest, the more aggressive, explosive, most of the time they do that for maybe 5 minutes during the day. Rest of the time they're walking slowly or they're just sleeping. They peak their battles, they peak their efforts. They're not always like that. And it's something that is tough to understand for people who are not training hard yet, or who are just witnesses of the fitness industry, for example, because the only thing you really see in highlights is people training hard. And I'm sort of guilty of that too. If you go on my channel, I'm only showing you my walking set when I'm giving it 100%. So you might think, oh, he's doing that all the time. No, that's just a portion of my day. And even within my training, which is in itself a portion of my day, it's a small part. It's not the majority. Hard sets are the exception, not the norm. The warm-ups, as far as time is considered, make up for most of the training. And that's normal, that's fine. That's what Musashi is trying to tell us here. Of course, slowness is bad. Really skillful people never get out of time and are always deliberate and never appear busy. From this example, the principle can be seen. So speed is bad. We've seen that in the last episode. Slowness is also bad. And in a sense, when he says that, when we go back to what he just said before, because slowness and speed are just variations of rhythm, what he's telling you basically is don't think about being slow or don't think about being fast. Don't think about slowing down on purpose to apply yourself more. Don't think about speeding yourself on purpose to be more productive. Just be. Be in your rhythm, and your rhythm is going to be the best speed at which you should be walking. It's neither slow or fast, it's just the rhythm. A guy who sprints a 100-meter dash is going to go much faster than a guy who wants to run 10K. Why? Because they have to adapt to different rhythms. Objectively speaking, the guy who runs the 100-meter dash is faster. But at the end of the day, if you were to try and apply that speed on 10K, he would lose to the guy who runs slower. So that's the subjective part of it. You need to apply yourself in the right moment for the goal you want to achieve. Skillful people never get out of time and are always deliberate, meaning that you need to be able to manage time effectively. Even outside of lifting, that's a very important skill to have in everyday life, because you're going to find that if you undershoot, you're going to spend too much time being underproductive. But if you overshoot, you're constantly going to have to get things off of your list. And it's also going to damage your ability to make long-term schedules for your goals. And they also never appear busy. That's an interesting thing. It has nothing to do with lifting, in my opinion, but you could apply that to the atmosphere around you when you do something. Some people, when they do things, especially when they have to put in efforts, they have a sense of exhaustion about them and annoyance. They don't like it, and you can tell. We all know people like this, where the second you have to put in hard work, it's not that they won't do it, but they're going to have an attitude about it. And that's what Musashi is saying is appearing busy, basically. And the interesting part is that our society, at least in the West, but I do know that in the East, in Japan, for example, it's also quite prevalent. It's interesting to see how much we, or at least upper managements, treats people based on how busy they look and how busy they can appear to be instead of their actual results. Meaning that even if you have bad results, if you look like you're giving it your all, people are going to like that. And on the other way around, something that I've experienced, sadly, because I don't like lying and I don't lie with my attitude and my face. Even if you are a high performer, if you don't have the attitude that goes with it, meaning that you're not subservient or you're not always pretending to be doing something, people don't like it as much. Because you're supposed to be on the clock, and when you're on the clock, you belong entirely to the company, and therefore you need to be working hard, which is 100% fine. But there is a certain type of theater performance that needs to be put up that qualifies as working hard, is what I mean, even if the performance don't follow. So that's something to keep in mind. It's interesting that it also applies to what Musashi says here. Because in his opinion, someone who's actually skillful wouldn't have to do that, because their performance would speak for itself. And here he's saying that all of that describes a principle. It's up to you to understand the principle. I gave you a ton of keys. What is known as speed is especially bad in the way of strategy. The reason for that is that depending on the place, marsh or swamp and so on, it may not be possible to move the body and legs together quickly. I'm not going to expand on that. I talked about that with the 100-meter dash example. Your speed cannot be always at the same level because the environment and context in which you will evolve is going to have to regulate the speed. You cannot be a one-speed person. You need to be able to shift gear, to retrograde, to brake. All of these are important because you need to adapt. In this world, if you go into the mountains and decide to go deeper and yet deeper, instead you will emerge at the gate. Whatever the way, it has an interior, and it is sometimes a good thing to point out the gate. In strategy, we cannot say what is concealed and what is revealed. Accordingly, I dislike passing on my way through written pledges and regulations. Perceiving the ability of my pupils, I teach the direct way, remove the bad influence of other schools, and gradually introduce them to the true way of the warrior. So much to unpack here. First off, Musashi is the type of teacher that will not tell you, okay, do this. Rather, he will tell you, don't do that. And for me, it's a way of teaching that I appreciate. It's not something that can be done. I taught a lot in my past. I still do. It's a method that cannot be applied to the regular method of teaching, especially if you teach a class, because it's too frustrating. Teaching has become something that is sort of a downloading of knowledge, meaning you're supposed to pack the heads of your students full with knowledge that they can then regurgitate. And if you're not able to do that, then it's failed. The issue is that they're not really learning anything. They're just learning how to be you. They're learning how to solve a problem. This is why when you solve an equation for a math problem, you're supposed to show the way you got there, because there are multiple ways to get to the right answer. Now, sadly, this is used in today's STEM to completely destroy any ability of anyone to actually get to an answer with their own special way, because if you don't use the formula that you were supposed to use, it's wrong, even if you have the right answer. But I see it more as, if in a perfect world were to apply that method, it would allow people to find their own path. Because you can have a different path to the same solution that's going to apply to you more intimately because you found it. I can relate to that. And on this channel, because I have no obligations, no one is paying me to do that, I do what I want, I'm going to do that. I'm going to give keys of comprehension, I'm going to help people if they need help, but I'm never going to feed you the answer because it's worthless. You need to find your own answer. I'm just going to give you keys, and whatever door you want to open with that key is going to be up to you. So now to go back to the start of the paragraph. He speaks about going into the mountains, going deeper and deeper, and yet emerging at the gate. What does that mean? For me, that means losing your way. You were so focused in going deep into that mountain that you didn't realize that you were losing your way. In a sense, it also means that the way, when you're walking the way, if you lose sight of yourself, you don't know where you are on the way anymore. So you're too focused on the action of walking the way instead of just being on the way. he says that the way has an interior, and that the gate, what he calls the gate, can be the beginning or the end. Here I'm going to assume it's the end. Sometimes he says it's a good thing to point out the gate, meaning that it's a good thing to show the end product to your students. Say, hey, it's going to lead you here. But he also says that in strategy, we cannot say what is concealed and what is revealed. So in a sense, what he's saying is, yeah, it's a good thing to point out the gate because it's not frustrating. It gives the student a sense of what is to come, what they are going to accomplish, what they will get at the end, and the end product also. A lot of people, when they get into lifting, for example, they need to be reassured and cuddled that, oh, it's going to be a fruit and you're going to have a six-pack and you're going to have big arms. They can't just do it. They can't just try and see where it leads them, which is also why we have a lack of originality in the fitness industries, because everyone is a cookie cutter nowadays. We just follow someone else's programs, someone else's ideas, philosophies, because those people point out the gate. That's an easy way to be a teacher. You point out the gate. It's a promise. It's enticing to people. It's the equivalent of a guy who's buff who tells you, if you buy my supplement, you will get there. He's showing you the gate. He's lying to you, but he's showing you a factice gate. And to finish on the Win book that I highly recommend you read, of course, you should be reading that yourself. Musashi says, you must simply keep your spirit true to realize the virtue of strategy. Most important advice for everyday life, keep your spirit true. You know what you stand for. Deep down, you know it. You can lie to people, you can lie to the world, you can lie to yourself up to a point. But there is something in you that knows that you're lying, that you're not true to yourself. And yes, it can be scary to stand up for what you truly believe and what is in your heart. But once you do it, you're going to find that you reached into such a massive amount of bravery and courage that it can never be shaken again. Once you do what you think is right, no amount of intellectual dishonesty, no amount of bullying, no amount of threatening is going to make you move from your position, because you know it's right. And to finish on this review of the Book of Five Rings that I thank you for following, and I hope that you got something from it, we're going to cover my favorite book and we're going to end on that. And because this is my favorite book, I'm going to read it in one shot. It's only one paragraph. Here goes. The Book of the Void. The Nito Ichi way of strategy is recorded in this Book of the Void. What is called the Spirit of the Void is where there is nothing. It is not included in man's knowledge. Of course, the void is nothingness. By knowing things that exist, you can know that which does not exist. That is the void. People in this world look at things mistakenly and think that what they do not understand must be the void. This is not the true void. It is bewilderment. In the way of strategy also, those who study as warriors think that whatever they cannot understand in their craft is the void. This is not the true void. To attain the way of strategy as a warrior, you must study fully other martial arts and not deviate even a little bit from the way of the warrior. With your spirit settled, accumulate practice day by day and hour by hour. Polish the twofold spirit, heart and mind, and sharpen the twofold gaze, perception and sight. When your spirit is not in the least clouded, when the cloud of bewilderment clear away, there is the true void. Until you realize the true way, whether in Buddhism or in common sense, you may think that things are correct and in order. However, if we look at things objectively, from the viewpoint of laws of the world, we see various doctrines departing from the true way. Know well this spirit, and with forthrightness as the foundation and the true spirit as the way. Enact strategy broadly, correctly, and openly. Then you will come to think of things in a wide sense, and taking the void as the way, you will see the way as void. In the void is virtue and no evil. Wisdom has existence. Principle has existence. The way has existence. Spirit is nothingness. Written on the 12th day of the 5th month, 2nd year of Shoujo, Shinmen Musashi. I'm going to, even though I would like you to just take that in and make your own interpretation of this, I'm just going to encourage you to not think of this Book of the Void as nihilism. This is not what it is. This is deeper than that, and it's complicated and yet so simple. For me, the way I understand that is simply that by being the void, Musashi means that the way is everything. It exists in everything, and it can be everything. And in that sense, you might think to yourself, well, in that case, how come there is a fourth way? How come it's possible also to not understand what the void is and to be outside of the true void? All of this, from what I get, is something that only you can know. Meaning that, just as I said before, you will know if you're not on the way anymore. And reaching that is going to take the ability to sharpen your spirit so much that there is no doubt in your mind. That's when you're on the true way, when there is no doubt. In a sense, this is impossible because there's going to always, doubt is always going to remain. Doubt is necessary for human life. But the doubt that you have in everyday life can be still present without clouding the way. The way is going to be the broader picture and the small picture at once. It's going to be your life's direction. And in a sense, you might deviate from that. But once you've decided what you want in life, even if it fluctuates, making that decision that you're going to be on that way already puts you ahead of the game. And for me, that is the true way. And if it changes with life, then it changes with you. The way is not straightforward. It's subjective. If it goes left and you veer with it, then suddenly you're on the right path again. You're on the straight way. And this is the spirit of this book. It's the spirit of a man who accomplished spiritual awakening, the mastery of his physical body, and who understands also that he will not be able to do that for you. That no one can do that for you. That anyone who thinks that they can bring other people to enlightenment are usually lying for profit or to feed their ego. No one can do that for you. But there are keys that can be given, because as you walk towards that, as a human, as a man or as a woman, you pick up those keys and they open certain doors for you. And you find that you can also lend those keys to other people. And they might open completely different doors. And it doesn't matter, because that will lead them to their own way, even if they open doors that you didn't. And even if they fail to open doors that you did, that's going to be their own way. And it's your honesty and your spirit as a human that is going to keep you on that way. And on this channel, of course, I preach the way of lifting, I preach the way of physical mastery. But above that, as a bodybuilder, I'm going to preach the physical activities that make you happy. Even if you don't relate to what I'm doing, my pursuit, I'm sure that you have your own pursuit, and I'm sure that we can agree on that. So I'm going to end here. Thank you so much again for following this review. Next week, we're going to start the Hagakure, which I'm extremely excited about because it's much bigger and denser than the Book of Five Rings. This one is still my favorite because you're going to see that the Hagakure, I'm not going to expand on that, but is much more preachy. This is like a breath of fresh air because nothing is given to you, it's up to your interpretation, and that's the beauty of the Miyamoto Musashi Book of Five Rings. I will see you next week. See you soon.